Hi there, this is Niki Rowland for the Shimmerz Paints YouTube education team, and today I am working designing a layout using some of the Vibez sprays, the Shimmerz paint and the Inklingz ink, the minor 49, the one that is beautiful gold. So I'm creating a snowy layout today. I have a large snowflake cut file and I'd like to put some colour behind the cut file onto a light pink piece of pattern paper. So I've started off by using the packaging technique, and I've used the Vibez spray Pop Art Pink to put the first layer of pink on, and then I'm just gone in with the Shimmerz watercolor paints in pink and did the same technique with the packaging and applied another color of pink on there too to add a bit of dimension. And now I'm going in with a much darker color. Again, it's a Vibez and it's called Deep Blue Sea. It's quite a bold dark color. I was quite brave to use that on this layout, but it works really well. That color appears in some of the other papers that I'm going to use, so it wasn't out of place. I'm now going through and adding some flicks in all of the colours that I've used, and just to give a bit of extra dimension and a different texture on those same areas. So I'm just going over colour by colour to add the flicks there. So that's the background there is nearly complete. I'm just going through to dab off some of the excess dots there so it doesn't take too long to dry. Whilst filming this, I was away on vacation and I didn't have a heat tool, so it was either blot it or leave it to dry for several hours before I could carry on, and that didn't work for filming a video. So what I'm doing now is I'm using the Inklingz in minor 49er in the really beautiful gold colour. I've taken some of the paint out of the pot and put it onto a craft sheet, and I've added some extra water to make it really nice and runny. I've added flicks with my paintbrush, and then you'll see that I actually picked up my craft sheet and poured the leftover paint that was on the craft sheet onto the layout so that I got some really big, beautiful drops of gold. What I'm doing now is I've taken a chipboard word and I'm painting it with the Tickle Turquoise Shimmerz watercolor paints. I love these paints. They're runny and you can use them straight out of the pot. You don't have to mix them with water, and that's what I'm doing here. So I'm literally just picking it up straight out of the pot, no mixing, and applying it directly to that large chipboard word. The paint soaks right into that beautiful chipboard. It goes on like an absolute dream, really easy to use, absolutely gorgeous paint this is. So I'm just to say, finishing off painting. It's pretty quick drying as well, so it doesn't take long for that word to be touch dry so I can pick it up and move it around. While my word is drying, I'm just going to move that out of the way. I'm going to get my snowflake stuck onto my layout in a minute. I've already applied a load of foam pads to the back of it, and right now I'm just fussy cutting out those light strings that were in the Pink Fresh Studio December Days collection. It's a really lovely paper collection. I've really enjoyed working with it for my Christmas and winter layouts, yeah, absolutely love those light strings. I made it much more difficult on myself by cutting out the small ones from the 6x6 paper pad rather than the big ones. I'm cutting out two, and I'm going to loop those across my layout to give a little bit of extra interest there. Okay, so time to stick on my snowflake, just taking all the backs off those foam pads. The most boring job in the world, but well worth it because it's great when the cut files like that stand up a little bit and you get those lovely shadows. Okay, so back to this word. It's very solid colour blue at the moment, which is lovely, but what I want to do is add a little bit of texture to that word. So I'm using the Dazzlerz Foiled Again texture paste. It's in silver and a stencil, and I have placed the stencil on top of the chipboard word and have pushed the texture paste through. Because the chipboard word is not flat, it's raised off of the table. I had some bits that were overhanging, so I just smoothed those edges over with a palette knife. I'm just leaving that to dry a little bit and gone back to cutting out my light strings. my stencil wasn't long enough to go over the whole of the word, so therefore I've only done half of the word. And if I put my stencil back over the texture paste that's already there, I'm going to squash it. So I'm just leaving it for a few minutes to see if it's dry enough to reapply put the stencil back on and do the other half of the word. So it makes complete sense to do some fussy cutting while I'm waiting. I got bored and couldn't wait any longer, so I have gone ahead, put my stencil in place, and I'm hoping that it won't be ruined too much, and just smoothing off those edges again there, because I had some extra bits that I didn't need. And that gives me a word there, that today, which is blue, and it has this absolutely gorgeous foiled texture on top of it now. I want it to be completely dry before I add it to my layout. I keep moving it just to make sure that it's in position, but I won't actually stick it down until after I've finished filming, because I'm too worried about smudging the texture paste. It does need a few hours to dry, and I don't have a heat gun, so yeah, patience is a virtue. Okay, so on to building the rest of my layout now. You can see I've got my photo, which I've mounted onto a blue card or paper. That goes nicely with the dark blue Vibez Deep Blue Sea in the background. And I've stuck on my light strings. They wouldn't behave and stick in place, so I had to put various things over them to hold them down. And I'm just going through and adding in some embellishments, some chipboard embellishments, and some gold star acetate, all from the Pink Fresh Studio December Days collection, and a flare badge there. And you can see where I'm going to put my word today. Still being very careful that I don't smudge the texture paste on there, and just making sure, yeah, I don't put my hand in it, which I do all the time. And I'm just building up around the photo. I've got that cluster to the right of the photo, and another one down to the left of the word today, to balance that out. It's kind of gives me a bit of a diagonal line there, and a nice focal point for the layout. So I'm just carrying on here, adding in some bits and pieces, pops of colour using wooden buttons, some enamel dots, and some bits of ephemera from the collection. And now I decided that my layout needs a bit more fussy cutting, and I've gone ahead and cut out a number of snowflakes in different sizes to go obviously with the snowflake cut file and the very wintry snowy photograph that I've got there. So they all work really well together. It really brings the whole layout together, just adds those extra bits of colour here and there on the layout. Now that all those snowflakes are cut out, I can get those all stuck in place, raising them up on foam pads. I raise most things on foam pads, and I'm just going to finish off with some journaling, writing about what happened that day, and I'm going to finish the layout by just adding a few enamel dots there, dotted around the layout to bring it all together. And that is my layout complete. Thank you so much for watching me today. It's with my first video for Shimmerz Paint's YouTube education team. I've really enjoyed working with the products. I'll list them all below. Thank you so much for joining me. That was Niki Rowland for Shimmerz Paints.